one of the columns available is our timings column. And so you saw me enable this column. And when you do that, by default, we will already enable the estimated duration and the front time. But as you can see here, we have 8 different timings available for you to choose from. So again, depending on your personal preference or the needs in your specific role, you can choose to add as many of these timings as you want. So let's click them all. So your view can go all the way to this where you have all of your different timings available. What's nice here is that you can then choose, depending on which of the timings is the most important for you, you can grab one of these columns, so maybe the part timer, and move it to a different position. So if I want to move it here, I now have that one as my second column, for example. That also works with your notes columns, by the way. So if you want to add your notes to the front, to the back, or at different positions, you can just drag and drop these columns to have them in the specific order that works for your needs. Then, within our timings, so let's start with the actual duration. So if we quickly look at our blocks. Now, for all of your different blocks, or depending on how you have them configured, if we go to our edit block template for our EVS, if I have media in my Q block and I have selected the type video, so let me maybe do that with a video clip. That one is configured correctly. So if I go from my video clip to my media field, I had my checkbox where I can choose to include my timings in my estimated duration, yes or no. Same goes for text blocks. As for your text field, you can choose whether that needs to be included in your timings, yes or no. Now, why is that important? Well, that is because Cuez can calculate the estimated duration for you automatically. So if you were to upload a video clip in your EVS block, and for example, that is a 3-minute video, then Cuez would automatically fill in an estimated duration of 3 minutes. If I have, for example, a text block, so I will have to switch to my script view, show my estimated duration with a text block. So if we look here at our prompter text, Cuez can also automatically calculate, based on the amount of text in my text block, how long it would take to read that text. So that, again, is that checkbox where you can choose to have it included in your timings or not. Then that can be calculated automatically. From there, you can always overwrite your timings. So if you say, okay, this is not 5 seconds, but maybe this is 30 seconds, I can simply click in here and overwrite my timings. By default, your automatically calculated timings are shown in this darker color. And once you overwrite it, it becomes this blue color. You can always click the little arrow icon next to it to reset it back to its automatically calculated value. Now let me switch back to my rundown where I have all of my columns open. Here we go. So that overwriting of estimated duration, you can do that on the block level, but you can also do that on the item level as well as on the part level. So your item will calculate automatically based on all of the blocks that make up that item what the total duration would be. But as you see here, I have overwritten that value with 12.5 minutes. So if I quickly reset it, you see we have 2 minutes and 12. But again, if I want to make that 12.5 minutes, I can do that. Same goes on the part level. From there, so we have our block level, our item level, and our part level. And if we move one level higher, we are all the way at the top, and then we are talking about timings on the episode level as a whole. So in our episode, we can also say, okay, what time do we go on air with our show? So maybe that is 12:45. And what time would we go off air, or how long do we want our show to be? So if I say this is a 1-hour show, then that means we go off air at 13, so 1:45 p.m. Once I have my on air, my off air, and my duration of my show, as well as the estimated durations of my separate blocks, items, and parts, Cuez will then also automatically calculate for you the over-under duration. So if we know that we are targeting a 1-hour show, Then we know how much content we already have based on our estimated durations. Cuez will then tell me that I am currently, in my example, missing 44.5 minutes worth of content. So I know I have a little bit more work to do, so I can add more content to reach my 1 hour goal. So for example, if I exaggerate in my part 2 and make that a 55-minute part, I now see that I am 9 minutes and 13 seconds over my target of 1 hour. So I can very clearly follow up on my situation. Do I have too much content? Am I missing content? Do I still have to add to reach my 1 hour target? Now, our on-air and off-air times, we also use these in different calculations throughout Cuez. So for example, our front time and our end time, these also, and the back time, sorry, these also use your on-air and off-air times as a starting point. So if we know that our show starts at 12:45, then that means our very first front time will also be 12:45. If my first part is 13 minutes and 51 seconds, then my end time is also automatically calculated. Same goes for the back time, but this starts, so to speak, at the end of the show. So this one is telling you what is the latest possible moment in time that I should start part 1 to still end at 13:45, for example. What's nice is back times are overwritable in Cuez. So if you want to overwrite that automatically calculated value with something that deviates from that calculated value, you can do that. So maybe here my part 2, maybe, my item 2, maybe that's not 12:48, but maybe that is, 12:46, maybe let's make it like this. So again, we see it in blue because I have it overwritten and it's still within a calculation that makes sense. If I were to make this 12:55, for example, I still see this one in blue, but I see a couple that have now turned into a red color. And that is to help you indicate that there are a couple of back times that now technically no longer make sense because you have an item that happens before another one should start. So a lot of colors and things like that will help you make clear if your timings are good or is there some sort of conflict that you might have to double check. All of these things will become visible in your different timing columns. Then we also have a part timer. So by default here, for example, this will be empty. So if we know our part, technically this is going to be 13 minutes and 51 seconds, but maybe again, I want to deviate from that a little bit and I want to say maybe this is 10 minutes, let's make it. I will now see that in my first item, we also start from the 10-minute point, but after that, I see that I'm going to be short on time. So maybe if I make it in my example, let's make it 15 minutes. This, I see that when I start item 1, I still have my full 15 minutes available for counting down. And by the time I reach item 2, I will have 2.5 minutes remaining of my 15 minutes. So like that, I can set my part timers that will then automatically calculate my values spread over the different items available in that part to give you extra indications when it comes to your timing. And then we are almost there, so hopefully we'll manage to finish on time. One of the last things in regards to timings is our queuing mode. And let me just disable a couple of timings here. So let's get rid of part timer and maybe back time as well, like this. So if we see here at the very top, we have the word live. And when we click, we have a couple of options. So first of all, we can switch between a live show or a recorded show. The main difference is that for a live show, you will have the green and the red flag, so your on-air and off-air times. While if you switch to a recorded show, you will not have the option for on-air and off-air because, that doesn't really matter that much. Your main criterion is going to be your on-air duration, and so the total duration of your show. Now, here at the top, we have our queue mode. So if I switch this one on, I get this black bar at the top, our queue overview. Here we will see in a moment all sorts of information about our episode as we start queuing. And so the moment you go live, and so technically 10 minutes ago at 12:45, I would have started my show and start keeping track of my timings. So how do we do that? We have a new queuing column here at the back, but again, you can grab that column, put it somewhere else closer to the front if you like that. And in our queuing column, we have our play buttons. So if I want to start my show, I can click my first play button, and we now see here at the top, I am 10 minutes into my show, and because again, we said start at 12:45, and here in the top right corner, I see my current local time, 12:55, so I can keep track of that. I see that there are 49 minutes remaining until the theoretical end of our show. I also see an over-under timer, which is going to show you the difference between your estimated durations and if you have already done some timings in your show, that will update live. And so here by default, we see our over-under duration compared to our show duration. But here, this one that is currently red updates as we queue through our show with new updated information. Next to it, we also see what we are currently queuing. So in this case, it is my part 1 that I'm queuing. I'm 1 minute into it. I see my progress bar. I have 12 minutes and 40 seconds remaining until the theoretical end of my part. And here on the right, I can either click this button to queue my next part, or as you see mentioned below, I can click the space bar to queue my part 2. So when you are queuing on the part level, the next thing that you queue will always be the next part. So you stay on that same level. So if I do that, I move to my part 2. If I were to queue on the item level, so maybe here my welcome item, you now see it's item 1, and my next will be item 2. So in that case, we stay on the item level. So just like this. As we are queuing or moving through our parts and items, you see that in my actual duration column, I can keep track of how long I actually spend in my specific item or in my part. The one that I'm not timing anymore, that is fixed now, of course, but the one that is still currently timing, I see my time counting up. I also have these little indicators here at the front, so orange arrows pointing down, or a red arrow pointing up, or a green dot to indicate if you are under your estimated duration, over your estimated duration, or right on top of it. So again, a lot of information to help you keep track of all of that. Now, this queuing, that is usually done by one specific person in your team, but the rest of the team might, of course, want to follow along with that queuing. So in that case, you can use the follow queue mode here in the top right corner. So anyone that wants to follow along with the queuing can click this button. What happens then is the PA, for example, when they are queuing and they queue the next item, everyone that is following will see their script or rundown, whichever view they have open. They will see that scroll automatically to have the actively queued part or item always scroll to the top. So that makes it very easy to stay on the correct part of your episode. So that's everything for timings.